Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Chris Pullman. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Sergeant David Peter Gooley, whose story will be told shortly. As always, we welcome the veterans who are served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. This evening, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read just one of the stories behind those listed on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant David Peter Gooley. David Gooley was born on the 25th of August 1918 in Terang, Victoria. The youngest of 10 children born to shoemaker David John Gooley and his wife Alice. Known to his family and friends as Little Digger, he enjoyed playing pretend soldiers as a child and later gained a reputation as a keen football player. As an adult, he worked as a boot repairer in a woolen mill and in an iron foundry. At the outbreak of war in 1939, he was working as an iron moulder. David Gooley enlisted in the Australian Military Forces on the 17th of January 1940. He was assigned to the 58th Battalion with the rank of private and began training in Australia. He was promoted to corporal and in 1942 to sergeant when he was selected for signals training at Bonegilla. After completing his training, he joined the Guerrilla Warfare School in Victoria in late August. He took part in further training at Canberra Jungle Training School in Queensland, and in June 1944 joined Z Special Unit. Gooley joined Z Special shortly after the success of the Jaywick operation, in which a small group of Australian commandos had infiltrated Singapore harbour, destroying enemy ships. The operation had been such a success that it was decided this bold feat would be attempted again. Gooley was one of 15 men who made it through a gruelling training regime to be selected for Operation Remel. On the 11th of September 1944, the men boarded submarine HMS Porpoise, headed for Singapore. A fortnight later, they seized control of a junk named Mustica and loaded their supplies, including several single-man submarines known as Sleeping Beauties. The traditional fishing boat provided part of the disguise they needed to go undetected in enemy waters. They parted ways with the Porpoise 2 days later, scheduled to meet back at Marapass Island after the mission. On the 10th of October, they approached their target. It was clear that the Japanese had increased security since Operation Jaywick. Despite being spotted, the men proceeded with the operation, successfully penetrating the harbour and destroying at least 3 enemy ships. The party made their way back to the rendezvous point, but for reasons unknown, never met up with the submarine. To avoid capture, they split into smaller groups to make their way to safety. Sergeant Gooley was joined by Captain Page, Able Seaman Falls, and Corporal Fletcher. The other 12 men went their separate ways. On the 15th of December, Gooley's party was discovered by the Japanese on Selajar Island. Falls was immediately captured. Gooley and the others were caught the following day and were sent to Darbo Police Station, where they were interrogated. The men in the other parties were all captured, killed, or drowned. In March 1945, Gooley and the other Remel operatives were moved to Outram Road Jail in Singapore, where they had been marked as war criminals by the Japanese. There they were beaten, starved, tortured, and battled daily with disease and poor conditions. On the 3rd of July, the 10 remaining men of Operation Remel were sentenced to death at Japanese trial, found guilty of perfidy and espionage. At 10 a.m. on the 7th of July, 1945, Gooley and his comrades were taken to an execution ground where they were beheaded and buried in a communal grave. When news of his death reached his family in Australia, they posted a notice in the local newspaper which read, "You bade no one a last goodbye, nor knew the end was near. You left behind some aching hearts that loved you most sincere." Sergeant David Gooley was 27 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in World War II. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant David Peter Gooley, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.